That's a good question. That could be indefinite. It really can. There's people who's worked in the industry for, and I know a guy called Steve from Trent, he's a location assistant, and he's 35 years old. He's getting, for a 35-year-old, he's only getting paid like, a low amount of pay compared to what he should be achieving. So, and he's been in the industry for 10 years, he's been doing props, he's been going around circulating. So it's, it's a mystery. It could be any time. You just have to be patient. That's all I can say. It could take you 6 weeks. It could take you 6 months. It could take you 6 years. It could take you 10 years. It could take you 15 years. There's no really definitive answer that you guarantee that you're going to get the thing. But if you're willing to sacrifice that to be the job that you're happy with, or to go somewhere that you're happy with, then it's up to you. The thing that I recommend in this industry is that you are going to have to take personal sacrifices to be in the film industry or something like that. You might get asked, you might do a film, and you might not see your friends for a couple of months. I still suffer it from that. I've got friends in Manchester. I haven't seen them months and months and months, and they want me back, and it affects your relationship with them. So that's like personal sacrifice you've got to be. And then the catch-22 that you're in is when you do get time off, they're busy. So you have to try and do something. You have to try and consolidate that. So it is. You have to make personal sacrifices, and it is tough. But you got to say to yourself, where you're going to be when you're 40 years old. That's my thing in life. Where you're going to be at 34 years old. Are you going to be working as a janitor, something like that, working as a green cleaner in the hall of a school, or are you going to actually risk those sacrifices to be at you at the age of 40. That's the way I see it. So, and the thing is, you have to take a lot of stick to get where you are. And if you don't, then you won't last long in the industry. You have to take a lot of stick from the producers, from the director. There's times when I've taken a lot of stick, and I've just had to deal with it. With some people, they'll kick off with it, or kick off with her. So that helps you just to take educational route. It's just experience, because I did a bit of film work in when I was in school, at the age of 15, 16, I did film stuff and all that. And then I was somehow forced to join the army. So all that thing I learned disappeared. So, then this idea of being away for long times and all that helped. Of the way the long hours doing all helped that experience that I learned to get me where, because it's sort of like the film industry is like the army. It's brutal. Like I say, brutal. You are working long hours. You hardly see your friends. You've got you're traveling long distances sometimes. Stuff like that. So all that experience is accumulated here. Community. I can't say the word. Has evolved into what where I am now. Educational wise, I would say the biggest thing that had helped me educational wise is knowing I'm dyslexic, and has helped me progress, because I've started to overcome those obstacles in terms of learning how to write my first script, which I've only done this year, and I've normally been I've dyslexic now for 3-4 years. So I would say it's experience more than anything, not qualifications. When I was working in World War Z, I was doing 22 hours a day, so I had to be organised in a way that I learned everything from the army to adapt to that, to work with the 22 hours, knowing I only had probably 2-3 hours sleep for for each day. Average day, basically, you'll be the first one in. Say you're actually on location, you'll be the first one in to get the heaters up and everything. So you have these massive marquees. You're in at 4:30, 5 o'clock before the makeup. So you get the heating on for the power, and then suddenly you're going into you're making sure everything's on for the whole unit base. Then you go to location, depending on what time it opens that, because when you do contracts with stuff and all, they have to have open an hour before we're rolling camera. So you go in and you're getting all your location items like heaters, red rads, easy ups, chairs and everything, power for crew and all that. So you've you go in and set it all up, and then you run around for the first 2 hours, and then at lunchtime you start doing the bins and all that, and then as things start closing, you start working out what you're going to do the next day, so you make sure everything's switched off and everything. But on a bigger aspect of the location department, normally they do scouting, so you do location scouting, which I've not done yet, which I will be doing soon. You'll be doing, so you'll be travelling around the world, which is a fantastic job, where most crew, they just film at location and they're done. With locations, you could be in, say, Austria for about 6-7 months. I know people who are working on a next big massive franchise film with a secret agent, and they're out there for 6-7 months. So and you know, for most crew, they don't do that. They're just there and then they're gone. So it's one of those, you know, there's different aspects of what you do in the department. So you either go to agencies or you do scouting for a year, and you just go around taking photos and all that, and you show it to the director, and you show him like 5 different locations of the sort of thing he's looking for that one particular set. So he goes around and checks it, you know. So I've not done that yet, but I say next year we start definitely doing that. It's about your experience. You can't do a year. You can't do a year of being a location assistant and go straight into it. You have to have a couple of years. You have to be a noble name to try and get somewhere with it, I think. So, but there are risks where sometimes I did it when I was on the Muppets. Before the Muppets, I came back from New York. I spent about 4 or 5 grand, ridiculous amount, because I was literally staying in a hotel next to Empire State Building, so I blew all my money. And I came back, I think I got no job, and then for 5-6 weeks, didn't do anything. And then I was lucky enough to keep working on the Muppets. So. I was given an opportunity, so it's just one of those, you have to take risk. And
we might need to do. Yeah, we did.
I've got quite a loud voice. I've got quite a loud booming voice when I speak. Basically, the novel I made, novel I wrote, got released called Britpop. I had an idea to turn that into a TV pilot, and I signed initially what I thought was only an option agreement with a producer who can't mention the name, obviously, of who I had worked with before, and just said to me, yeah, don't worry, it's just an option agreement. We started casting it. I was very stupid. I didn't look at the contract, because I'd worked with the guy before, and he sent me a 17-page contract. Usually option agreements are 1 to 2 pages, okay, for a script, okay. Now, once we cast it and we started shooting character trailers, we started getting some interest from E4 and Northern Film and Media. So they turned a guy called Ian Fleming, not the James Bond writer. He is one of the main directors of Hollyoaks. He read the script and he said, look, this is brilliant. I'll take it to Concord Media, take it to Northern Film Media. They read it and said, look, we will give you X amount of money. We'll get the pilot on E4 and we'll give you X amount of money to develop the entire first series. So I was like, brilliant, excellent. They said the one issue is the producer you've got, who you signed your option with, we don't want, okay? We're willing to keep him as an associate producer in the background, but we don't want to work with him, okay? So I showed what I thought was an option agreement, which I could legally easily get out of, to Ian Fleming. Ian reads it and says to me, do you know what you've signed here? I said, I thought I signed an option agreement. He said, you've signed rights over for 10 years. I go back to Northern Film Media in E4 and they go, well, we can't make this unless you get rid of this guy, and this is a rights agreement. Myself and Ian spoke to the producer I'd originally signed with. I said, first of all, I thought I'd signed an option agreement. It turns out you've conned me with a 17-page contract that makes no sense, which is a rights agreement. And basically, can you leave, basically? He said, I won't leave unless you give me £50,000. It's a true story, isn't it? And basically, Northern Film Media and E4 turned around and said, well, we're not going to give them £50,000 because it's your problem, you need to get rid of it. So, unfortunately, coming that close to getting the Britpop TV series greenlit, it fell through. Because of my own stupidity legally of not checking the original contract I was shown. From that massive mistake, I then joined the Writers Guild of Great Britain, became a full member, and they vet all of my contracts. So legally, everything from making that huge mistake, which was quite a career-defining mistake, from that I learned, one, to read everything you ever given before signing it. Don't be an idiot like me, basically. And to have all your contracts vetted. Join a union, so I joined the Writers Guild, and they vet everything for me. So that's all free of charge. They look at it, because I'm a union member, they will then vet the contract and tell me exactly what I'm signing, what I should and shouldn't change. Whenever I have any scripts commissioned of stuff I've written myself, I only pass over 2 to 3 year options. I never sign the rights over. As a screenwriter, you never ever give the rights away until they've given you either 2.5 or 5% of the budget. So no one can actually shoot your film, what you've written, until they've given you 2.5 or 5% of what the final budget of that film is, okay, before they shoot. Only ever give people option agreements. Okay, I never wake up in the morning and think, yes, I can't wait to spend 20 hours at a laptop writing today. I wake up in the morning and think, I've got to be honest, I wake up in the morning and think, I want to lie in bed and watch Sky Sports all day. That's, that to me is my initial thought. Turn the laptop on. The first half hour is the most difficult stage of writing. That's the bit where you have to be very, very disciplined. Because you have to force yourself to write. Because you wake up, you start writing, it's your mind's blank. Once you get into it, you force yourself to write. I know loads of writers go, oh, I want to write something, but I'm not in the mood to write. No one's in the mood. No one wakes up wanting to do work, wanting to write. Once you start writing for half an hour, that becomes 3, 4, 5 hours, and before you know it, you've written 10, 15, 20 pages, and it's flowing. So the most difficult disciplined element of writing is the initial start of the day, the initial half hour. Once you get past that, before you know it, you've written for hours. When you're writing for other people, and say for a producer or a director on their idea, you have to be very disciplined, because you're usually given a deadline. So you have to force you have to make sure. I write very quickly. I can write a first draft of a feature script in about 3 weeks. Didn't used to be like that. It used to take me 18 months when I first started. Now I can do a first draft in 3 weeks because it's just through practice. But yeah, when working for other people, you have to discipline yourself. Yeah, you have to get used to basically sitting down for a number of hours per day. One of the main things when you're writing for someone else's idea is don't just go off for 3 weeks and write it and give it to them, because it may not be. They may read a 90 to 120 page script and go, I didn't see it like that, it's not what I want. So what I do as a commissioned screenwriter is when I'm brought in, every single 10 pages, or at the end of each day, I will send the director or the producer what I've written that day. So they can then make notes, make sure that I'm following what their vision is. So in that respect, it's very disciplined. When you're writing your own ideas, which you then want to try and pitch or sell to a producer or director, you haven't got that same discipline because you're doing that initially in your spare time to then sell on. So you have to force yourself to have that same kind of discipline, So a lot of it's mind over matter with your own idea. I'll usually take 1 week or 2 weeks to prep everything before I start, and that will be brainstorming. That will be brainstorming 3-act structure, character biography, so I'm very thorough. Preparation is everything. If it's about a certain era, researching that era. So that will be all coming to a massive brainstorm to try and work out what is the story, what is the journey of the character, basically. Some writers, every writer works differently. I know some writers who will just sit down, and they just start to write. I know Quentin Tarantino writes like that. He doesn't really prep stuff. He said, you've all seen Reservoir Dogs, You know the bit when he slices the ear off. He said he didn't know that was coming until he got to that scene. So as a writer, Tarantino, have a blank page and just start writing. Myself, I like to brainstorm and prepare stuff like a week, 2 weeks, so I know exactly what happens when I write it. It varies. The feature film we're shooting in Oxford in February is a horror movie called Rancor. If you go to IMDb, then it will have with Rancor, then you'll be able to go to the website through the link. That's only 2 drafts, and we've only just completed casting. We'll do 1 more draft, which will be a 3rd draft, and then that third draft would be the shooting script. But that's because the director had like a 3-page synopsis, came to me, I understood exactly what he wanted. Like, I got it straight away what he wanted. I worked with him for 3 weeks to write it, got it now, he did a rewrite, now we'll cast it and we'll do a final shoot script. That's pretty rare. I was once brought in as a script editor on a feature film. I was brought in when they were on their 20th draft and they had been rewriting it for 18 months. 20 drafts of a script. So it varies. Something like Rancourt, 3 drafts, we're shooting it. Something like Shots of Paradise was 20 drafts. A script of mine called City of Shadows, which has been developing for 3-4 years with 2 companies. That's on its 5th draft. So it varies. It varies. It's a lot. You do a lot less drafts as the writer if you've got the director on board with you from the start when you're writing it, because you know you're writing towards their vision. Okay, so you know what you're writing is going to be quite near to a shooting script. As they were saying earlier on, I think Reese was saying the most difficult thing to rewrite is dialogue, because it's a nightmare. Dialogue is so difficult to write. Because you may write stuff and think, oh, that's really good, and you hear it read back by actors or even by friends or family, and you think, oh, God, that sounds rubbish, that sounds really awful. And so dialogue is the thing you'll rewrite the most. But yeah, a draft can, from initial idea to shooting script, it can be anywhere between 1 draft all the way to 20. Really does depend on how tight it is, who you've got who you're working with, if the director's on board early. I think a lot of it is timing, and a lot of it is luck as well, and if a genre is hot at that moment. Say you come up with a zombie film, let's pretend The Walking Dead, you all watch The Walking Dead TV series, yeah? Brilliant TV series, yeah? Okay. Let's pretend The Walking Dead never existed, yeah? Okay, so you have, zombie films haven't, let's pretend that zombie films haven't been popular since, say, the 80s, yeah? I know they're massively popular now. And say suddenly zombie films become hot and you've got a zombie film idea, you know that film's going to get a major release, even if you shot it low budget for a festival film, because you know that genre's hot at the moment. So the distributors know, the cinemas know that there's going to be an audience for that. What I would say is to get a proper big kind of release now is very difficult, because it's because of.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
So do you need to finish?
No, just making sure that you...
Oh, right, yeah. Sorry. Because with distribute, you think of cinemas and multiplexes and stuff, and big Hollywood movies which are constantly being shown. And it's so competitive now. What you'll find is films that used to be able to get a big release, even if they were, say, a low-budget festival film, they don't so much go onto the cinema now. What's happening now is, well, you probably see it, a film being a festival might play a limited 1-week run on the cinema, then straight away, within a month of release, it'll go onto DVD. Because that's where the kind of market is, unless it's a big budget film, where they know they can show it on the cinema for like 3-4 months. Films are now kind of, they go for festivals, you might get a week run on nationwide cinema, if it's been popular at festivals, then it's DVD release. And that's how quick the turnover is. So it's very difficult to get an independent film on a cinematic release now, but you're guaranteed DVD release. There is one international film, if you go to IMDb, and that's The Peppercorn Chronicles, which is in pre-production in LA at the moment. And I was brought in as one of the co-writers, contribution writers for that, with the director and his wife. That's under Martina Cole's company. That's the first American-based Hollywood script I've been involved in. In the main, it's meant to be in British independent films, yeah. That's the first American one I've been involved in, yeah. But if you used to ask me what I've actually preferred, I've actually preferred working on the British independent ones than actually, not that that was a bad experience, Peppercorn Chronicles, it wasn't. Into trouble anyway, leaving. It's a totally different way of doing things, working in that kind of big budget scale. There's so many people who are involved, and rather than you just working with the other writers and the director, you know, to get the idea on the table. Before you know it, there's like 15 different marketing people and advertising people, and they all want a piece of the pie of, well, that person should wear this, and they should say this because then we can market it like totally different work. You know, I've never relied on an agent to give me any work. I know people who have had. If you want to break into TV, it's funny actually. I was speaking to Owen about this. He was asking me about that just downstairs where he's having a cup of tea. If you want to break into TV, you're better off having an agent. If you want to break into film, you don't need an agent as a writer. I know writers who have had agents for, say, 4 or 5 years. They haven't had one day's paid work. Or if they have, it's been like an episode of Doctors or something. I've never had an agent. I've never gone for an agent. And I've made a full-time living of it for the last 5-6 years. I find, that's in films, I find that producers and directors and production companies in films prefer to work with writers who don't have agents. Especially because the British film industry basically is independent films. You know, there's no massive big budget British films being made really, maybe a dozen a year, if that. So from a film perspective, you don't need an agent at all, you just need a good idea. Basically, you've got this brilliant script and you're like, okay, now what do I do? That's what, yeah, now what do I do? I mean, that is scary. You think, well, what do I do with it? You know? Okay, what you'll find is, production company, the first thing you'll do is, you can have the greatest script in the world, but there's 2-3 things you need to make sure you have with it before you start sending it out. One, you've got to make sure that formatting is perfect. If that formatting isn't perfect, it'll get thrown in the bin of whoever you sent it to after one page. Seriously. The format of scripts is essential. I know it's a really boring thing to have to do, but it has to be essential. Because production companies, directors, producers, they receive hundreds of scripts a week if they're not working on stuff. So the first thing they look at, page 1, is it formatted right? Yeah, cool. Wait a minute, that's not formatted like a proper script. Boom, bin. 2 is, before anyone will read a script, they will ask to read a pitch. Do you guys know about pitches? One-page pitches, basically. Or what's known when you go to festivals like Cannes and stuff, people say you meet a producer, they go, can you tell me your idea in 40, 30 seconds? And you never really think stuff like that existed until you're actually there and someone goes, tell me your idea in 30 seconds. And that's known as like an elevator pitch. So you need the formatting right, you need a one-page pitch, which basically sells the idea. It basically has a log line. It will tell you, it will tell the reader a little bit about the story, the kind of genre it is, and what kind of films it's comparable to, which are kind of reference to. So say if you're making a sci-fi, and it's a horror sci-fi, you'll say, you know, that's taken inspiration from Alien, etc., etc. But make sure you put down films that are popular. Don't put down something which like made no money, because then whoever's going to read it is going to go, well, why do I want to read that company? And then the third thing also is kind of sometimes create a media package. So 50%, which is where you'll have kind of a mood board of kind of designs of the way you kind of see it looking, a little bit about the characters. Sometimes your own little poster idea of what it would be. Basically, the more stuff you can show of visually how you see the film, not even if you're not directing it, just so whoever receives it first of all, they can look and go, oh look, there's a pitch, oh look, there's a poster idea. You're visually placing them in to what that story is going to be about. If they like all that, then they'll read the script. Okay, so you've got to make sure you have all of those things prepared properly. Then what you'll find is most production companies or producers, they're always looking for scripts. Think about your favourite films, see who the producers are and the production companies are, or even Google independent production companies making British films at the moment. Most of them, all of them will have their own websites and they all have a submission process. And their submission process is usually, please email our development person. It will have an email a pitch first. That's it, email a pitch and a short biography about yourself. Doesn't matter if you've never written it before. And then, if they like that, they'll ask for the script. So it really is that simple. People, I can understand where you come from like that. If you haven't done that before, it must be very scary. Like, God, it's a closed shop. You know, but it's actually quite simple. Producers and production companies are looking for scripts every single day, you know, because they want the next big film, they want the next good, you know, the next potential runaway hit.